where it all starts. In 1888, a traveling nurseryman called Templeman sold 2 Jacaranda seedlings to a Mr. Jacob D. Seviers. These seedlings were imported from Brazil. J.D. Seviers planted the trees at Myrtle Lodge, where he lived, in Sunnyside, Pretoria. These trees, planted in 1888, can still be visited today. That's how extraordinary it is. And these 2 trees became parent trees to many of the trees in Pretoria. So important were these trees that in 1939, if you use planting along streets in Pretoria, his efforts in establishing those 200 trees were the beginnings of trees being planted in the streets of Pretoria. And as a result of his efforts, because he'd done that, James Clark was given a nickname, Jacaranda Jim. Jacaranda Jim died on the 2nd of January 1956, and he is buried in Heroes Acre in Pretoria underneath one of these beautiful Jacaranda trees. So you would think that's the end of Jacaranda Jim, but because that, and you can understand, his name was James Clark, Jacaranda Jim, I can understand that. What I didn't understand is that there's a second Jacaranda Jim, and his name is Frank Walter Jamison. Why Jim? I have no idea, but he became the second Jacaranda Jim. He is the person who was most famous for the planting of jacaranda trees in numbers in Pretoria, and was given also the nickname Jacaranda Jim, perhaps because Clark had done the same sort of thing, but they were much the same vintage. Jamison's link to Pretoria was when he arrived in 1905, when he was appointed the technical commissioner to attend to, I wish we had him now, to all the sewage problems in Pretoria. They needed somebody to make certain that the sewage system was working, and they made this effort. So he was appointed there in 1905, and in 1909, Jamison planted 40 miles of jacarandas in the city in 1911. During this time, the city council also donated 2 jacaranda trees to every household who was willing to take down 2 of their trees that was interfering with the sewage system. So, despite the fact that we now have a problem with jacaranda trees, they were regarded as being the answer. So they gave them jacaranda trees as a substitute if they would take down 2 trees. When he left Pretoria in 1920, no fewer than 6,000 jacarandas had been planted, but the policy of the city council was to continue like this, planting jacaranda trees. And these numbers rose. He established Nelsonian nurseries in Turffontein. And remember Turffontein and Doornfontein, those were the sort of areas at that stage. By 1896, William Nelson had grown some 30 million trees, shrubs, and plants for general distribution. So this was another of our great visionaries who had enough enterprise and foresight and so on to produce the things that we would need. He then apparently planted 66 miles, 106 kilometers of trees along the newly appointed suburb of Kensington. And Kensington is a little bit scruffy nowadays, but the jacaranda trees are still there. The whole project took 6 months to complete, but he did it. 106 kilometers of jacaranda trees along there. Jacarandas are exotics, but they're now very much a part of Johannesburg, and they're capable of withstanding the test of time with a life expectancy of 200 years. If they're properly treated, they live 200 years. And perhaps I didn't know this until I did the research, that you can go on jacaranda walks around Johannesburg. There's a sunset with jacarandas. Shelbourne Road, many of you will know Shelbourne Road, and this is just outside St. George's Church. That's the one on the left is Emerentia, and there's another just low jacaranda which just looks fantastic. And I love this carpet, the carpet of blossoms. I know it gets very squelchy and slippery, but it does look beautiful when it's like that. It is believed that this was the first time street trees were planted in South Africa on such a large scale. But then, of course, by this stage, Johannesburg was very much the sort of the gold city, and everything was happening. Johannesburg is reported to have over 10 million trees, not all jacarandas, but 10 million trees. And the aerial views show, can you see Ponty in the background? And all of that purple that you will see next month. If you go up onto the ridge, you can see.